Things are happening in the world so quickly that it's awfully difficult at times to figure out which ones you have to parse through, which you can parse through, uh, such as Brazil insulting Israel, the UN not doing much, if anything, having to do with world governing, and I guess that's what they're supposed to be doing, failing miserably in all aspects of this world governing that they're doing. How much does the United States spend on the UN? All these things we're going to cover and more, including killing donkeys for medicine, all here today on the Worldview. Hi, everybody. Chris Greco here for the next 30 minutes, your host for the Worldview, talking about stories, issues that are not covered under the mainstream media, probably never will be covered under the mainstream media, but are covered under other areas. Love the BBC because basically they are kind of nearer to Europe than we are, continental Europe. I don't know if they like to be called Europeans or not, but it's interesting how they feather that between European and kind of this island you know island nation aspect. But the BBC covers it very well, and they do a very, very good job. Now they got they're near right to Europe. Also, they have a large number of correspondents that are out there. Al Jazeera does a great job. France 24 does a great job. I know something France that I like. DW, the German. They do a great job in German network. So a lot of things we're going to cover today. So let's start right off the bat with something that is not going to be covered in the mainstream media. South Korean doctors strike, right? So now all of a sudden, South Korean doctors are saying, look, you're bringing in more physicians, you're going to mess us over. So we're striking. So they're striking, in protest of those plans. A small story, but this is a large situation here. This is something that needs to, surgeries delayed, hospitals turned away patients. $1,600 doctors went on strike. So, more trained physicians in the system. Basically, these are the ones that have been taking on, all this work, and they're going to get more trained physicians in, and it kind of pushes them out. So they're saying, no, we're not going to do that. So it's just a small story, but I wanted to make sure and bring that up because things are happening in other parts of the world besides the United States, right? Wagner. Here we go, right? So the head of Wagner, Prigozhin, he basically died, right? So now they're trying to figure out what to do with this thing. So they're calling it the Russian Expeditionary Corps, right? And so this is the interesting aspect, and we're in a situation where Wagner or the Russian Expeditionary Corps is now Russian Expeditionary Corps, by the way, is REC, which is REC, which is basically what they're doing, is they're going into West Africa and they're doing mining aspects because Russia wants those raw materials. So to get the raw materials, they are going to put forth a security agreement, right? Security agreement that is going to put the Russians smack dab in the middle of this mining aspect. So yeah, that's a problem. This is Russia state coming out of the shadows in its African policy. Here we go. So here we have that situation happening. Okay, again, not covered, right? Not covered by U.S. I don't see anything in the U.S. media about this. Okay, Trident missile test fails for second time in a row. UK, evidently, just it didn't work, folks. I mean, these are our nuclear deterrent, and evidently it didn't work twice. Which I don't think is really a big deal from that standpoint. And this is from a military standpoint, is that, you test them just to make sure that your current inventory works, right? And evidently the current inventory needs some refurbishment. So, get to it, right? So this is what's happening there. Of course, Mr. Shaps is saying, hey, look, the defense secretary for the UK is saying, absolute confidence in Trident submarine missiles, nuclear warheads, all these things. Yeah. So anyway, it's kind of embarrassing, but again, something that is not covered in the US media. Biden, confident on $60 billion Ukraine war package vote. He thinks that this baby is going to go through and we're going to give $60 billion more to Ukraine. Look, I get it. Ukraine was invaded by Russia. So my question is, why are we giving them money? Why doesn't the UN take on this situation like they did with Kuwait when Iraq invaded Kuwait? I'll tell you why. Is because the Security Council, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, and how the Security Council is so screwed up. And let me tell you something, the UN, I do not understand how it still continues to work. They have these little areas, UNICEF and those types of areas that are being funded by countries to try to bring in more humanitarian aid and that type of thing. But this is ridiculous. I mean, $60 billion more. I don't know how much we've given. I think it's 150 billion. I think we've given them. This is ridiculous. This has to stop. Either that or has to be accounted for. Or give the $60 million to rebuild. Or give the $16 billion and say, look, how about we invite Russia to join NATO? I mean, this sounds like absolute craziness on my part. And I get it. People are going to sit there and say, they're going to turn me off right now. But we offer Russia NATO membership. We sit there and say, look, join NATO. What does that do? Well, it puts Putin in a situation where he goes, I don't want to join NATO. Wait a minute now. You don't want any other country to join NATO. We're offering you membership. We're going to go through, vet you and all that stuff. But you don't want membership to NATO because why? It's, because you don't want anybody else to it. And my mother, who's Czechoslovakian, used to tell us, my grandfather used to say that, she was Czech also, was that the Soviets, if you had a cow and the Soviets didn't have a cow, the Soviets did not want to have your cow. They wanted your cow dead. And that's the way that I think Russian leadership is basically, they don't want anybody to be happy, except maybe for Putin. So this is going to be trench warfare for the next decade or two. Are we going to continue to support this? I mean, this is ridiculous. Either we need to go in with arms, or we need to say, look, UN resolution, whatever it is, you need to get out. And if you don't get out, then we're going to throw you out. UN resolution, you get a coalition and you go in there and you throw the Russians out. I mean, they should have done that after the first week. I mean, this is insane what's happening. And all it's doing is making every other country poor. Africa flying presidents. So here we have a situation where this is actually interesting, that these presidents in Africa are flying, right? They're flying to different countries. Africa is not a small nation. And I think, just to make the point, and I think this is really, I think I'm going to make this point, because I think this is really important, right? You have to show what some of these distances are, because a lot of people don't realize, oh, Africa's not that big. Look at it on a map. Well, the problem is when you look at it on a Mercator projection, it doesn't show the true ideas of distances, right? It just shows it's the way the projection is. So what we're going to do is we're just going to bring in Africa here. Now I'll tell you what. Let's just we're going to bring in tools. We're going to bring in the ruler. And we're going to measure some distances. We're just going to measure some distances here. So we're going to go from here all the way across. Relatively narrow, right? 2,468 miles. 2,468 miles, right? So now we take this out. We're going to go over here. 2,468 miles. Remember that number. 2,468 miles. Let's see what this is, right? So we're going to go here again. We're going to go here to here. 2,548 miles. From coast to coast in the United States is 2,548 miles. 2,468 miles between the narrow part of Africa, relatively narrow part of Africa. Let's go between here and here. What are we talking about? So, I mean, again, yes, you could sit there and say, no, you got to drive. No, that isn't going to work. So from the Horn all the way over to Ghana, we're talking about 4,477 miles, almost twice the distance of the United States right across here. I mean, twice the distance of the United States. So can you understand why you gotta fly, right? So Nigeria, Kenya, and Nigeria's became presidents. They faced similar criticism of their frequency trips abroad, right? So the flying president, and the thing is, what he's trying to do is he's trying to go to Europe to get some to get some backing, right? It's really interesting. Zelensky flies all over the world, literally all over the world. Nobody says a word. These guys are going around, are going to Europe to try to get backing for their country, and they are peed upon. So I don't understand, what the deal is here, but in the flying presidents, cut me a break. What are they supposed to do? They're supposed to go up to the Mediterranean, take a ship across. I mean, yeah, by the time they do that, it's going to be a week and a half. Israel condemns Brazil's Lula likening Gaza war to Holocaust. Said Israel's military camp was between a highly prepared army and women and children. Israeli described Lula's comments as anti-Semitic and said he was persona non grata in the country until he retracted them. The main Jewish organization also criticized. What is happening in the Gaza with the Palestinian people has no parallel in other historical moments. In fact, it did exist when Hitler decided to kill the Jews. I mean, Lula said that. So, I mean, this is interesting. The guy phrased it wrong. His phraseology stunk, and he's gonna pay for that. So from the standpoint of popularity and everything else. And let me tell you something. Israel is basically fighting for their lives, as well as trying to put a stop to terrorism that's coming across their country. Do I agree with how they're conducting this situation? I mean, it's like carpet bombing. You're targeting terrorism, but what are you really hitting, right? What are your targets here? And that was a main problem with us in Vietnam. We couldn't tell the difference between friendlies and non-friendlies. It was very difficult. So this is a difficult situation Israel is going to be in, and it'll be interesting to see how they react to this whole thing. But I mean, it's what is happening in Gaza Strip with the Palestinian people has no parallel in other historical moments. In fact, it did exist when Hitler decided to kill the Jews. So again, it's not a war of soldiers against soldiers, it's a war between a highly prepared army and women and children. Wow. So this is a condemned Hamas after its government killed at least 1,200 people, seized 253 hostages. And this is the problem. They still have hostages. They still have hostages. As long as they have those hostages, if one of my family was taken a hostage, I mean, I'd say do anything to get my family back. Do whatever you need to do to get my family back. I want my family back. So I mean, this is a big problem, and unfortunately, Lula just did not do very well. Now, why am I saying this? Remember, Lula, the country Brazil, he's left wing. He's done a lot of things that are, in complete contrast to the prior president. And basically, what's happening is he's trying like heck to figure out what's happening with the country itself. Getting rid of the Amazon rainforest, all that type of stuff. So he's having some issues, and he's trying to get everybody together. But Brazil also belongs to BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, run basically by China. This is a big issue. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see how that all turns out. Voters feel better about the economy. Will it help Biden? This is what you call a forced sampling area, right? So who they list, right? One by the name of Nancy Pontius, and 36-year-old Democrat. Okay, hasn't felt the same financial strain as tens of millions of Americans over the past couple of years. I definitely felt the gas price increase. I mean, so all of a sudden you have a Democrat who says, yeah, I'm going to vote for Biden. Let me tell you something. Every Democrat in this country is going to vote for Biden. They're not going to vote for a third party. And this is really, really important, especially the Republicans. I want the Republicans to listen to this. Do not vote for a third party candidate. Republicans, if you vote for a third party candidate, you might as well put in a Democrat. Democrat the same way. If you vote for a third party candidate, you are putting in the Republican. And everyone says, oh, no, no, no. Third party candidates, the most that a third party candidate has ever had in the history of third party candidates. I shouldn't say that because Teddy Roosevelt actually was a third party candidate. He won. But was Ross Perot. Ross Perot was a spoiler. He got 18% of the vote. 18% of the vote. His people that voted for him would have voted for George H.W. Bush. It turned out that put Clinton in power, and that was it. I mean, that was it for me. It was like, geez, oh man. I mean, so there was a lot of issues with the whole thing. And notice the next off year, Republicans took Congress. So I mean, it was very evident that that this situation. Third party candidates, do not vote for a third party candidate. Don't do that. Don't do that. Vote, Republican, Democrat. But if you vote for a third party candidate, you're basically throwing away your vote. My opinion, but decades of historical fact on this. I mean, this is not something I just came up with. Look at the record. Look at the record. I think that's pretty important. So anyways, I mean, I love the way that this is forced sampling though. I mean, I love the way that, hey, let's talk to a Democrat about what they think of Biden. Well, hello, they're going to vote for Biden. They love the guy. That's the way, that's the way it is. So, I mean, such confidence is welcome news from somebody whose first term has been troubled by a once in a generation 18% leap in prices. I mean, that's good. Okay. That's fine. So anyways, that's what's going on. And BBC can certainly have their opinions. Let's go to donkeys. We're talking about Democrats, right? Let's talk about donkeys. So donkeys killed each year to make medicine. Millions of donkeys killed each year to make medicine. This is no kidding. I mean, I love the BBC. They bring this stuff. This has not the mainstream media. They even talked about this. DeSaltwater relied completely on his donkeys, right? I couldn't see them. I searched all day, all night. Following day, it was 3 days before they got a letter from Ed telling he had found the animal's skeleton. Killed, slaughtered, their skin was not there. Donkey thefts, parts of Africa, because they need it for medicine. It's interesting. Origins are 1,000 miles from that field in Kenya. In China, a traditional medicinal remedy that is made from the gelatin in donkey skin is in high demand. It's called a hayo, I guess. So, I mean, so China is getting raw materials from the donkeys in Africa and using that to make Chinese medicine, to make some type of medicine. So that's what's happening with that. So, I mean, this is like nuts. This is craziness. Killing donkeys that the farmers have to use and the harvesters have to use for transportation in order to make medicine from China. Just it's crazy. So anybody that takes this medicine, just understand they're killing donkeys for it, and they're killing donkeys in other countries that need the donkeys. So this is going to be interesting how this all works out. But that's what's going on there. So now let's hit a couple of medicinal stuff. Examining excess mortality associated with the COVID-19 pandemic for renters threatened with eviction. This type. Okay, folks, let me talk to you about correlations. Correlation association. You can associate anything with anything, and you sit there and say, oh, is that right? I'm going to tell you. Look up spurious correlations. Right? I think it's Tivgen. So I mean, spurious correlations. Tyler Vigen. Right? Tyler Vigen. Here's spurious correlations. Here we go. Popularity of the first name Stevie associates with Amazon.com's stock price. Look at this. It does. Correlates it. Look at that. It correlates with Amazon's stock price. I mean, isn't this ridiculous? Master keys awarded in transportation correlates with the number of cartographers in New Mexico. I mean, come on, folks. Let me bring this up a little bit. Look at this. Look at that. It correlates. You can, what Tyler Vigen, he was actually studying for his law school exam when he come up with his book. His book, Spurious Correlations, I highly recommend it. I have it. It's the best, 14, 15 bucks you ever spend. It's really it's got all kind of stuff, but he's got a fantastic website here. Age of the Director won the Best Picture Award, correlates with Google searches for how to treat a snake bite. So you can correlate anything with anything. You have to pick the right association, but you can see it's called spurious correlation. And I think this is exactly what this is. It's spurious correlation. Come on, examining excess mortality associated with COVID-19 pandemic for renters threatened with eviction. Cut me a break. There's a lot of other things that happen to these people. I mean, they are trying to make a uh, a choice between rent and food. I mean, so if they have to pay their rent, they can't get as much food. So that means they're weakened. That means their immunity is weakened. That means that if they're hit with COVID-19, they could die. So I mean, all these things, there's no real, honest to God, root cause aspect that the Journal of American Medical Association is putting into play here. And I just love the way that they're taking all these different areas, like saying, if we quit threatening renters with eviction, then we'll have less, less mortality with COVID-19. That is not true. That is just basically not true. But I mean, but that's what's going on here. I mean, 282,000 renters received an eviction notification, and excess mortality analysis found that observed mortality 106% higher than expected. Again, if you're paying rent and you can't quite make the rent, and you're using your food to be able to make the rent, or you can't buy as much food because you're paying part of the rent, there's where the problem is. By comparison, observed mortality among similar renters was 25% higher than expected, and among the general population was 9% higher than affected. So I mean, housing instability was associated with significantly increased risk of death over the first 20 months of the COVID-19 pandemic. Eviction prevention efforts may have reduced excess mortality for renters during this period, which is hyperbole. That is absolutely cannot be proven. That is a counterfactual statement. And I do not understand how the Journal of American Medical Association can let them get away with that, because that is not factual in any way, shape, or form. But yet, for whatever reason, somebody's going to take this study and they're going to throw it up against the people who are renting, true people who are good, good, solid landlords. And they're going to say, look, you can't evict people because it causes them to be more susceptible to mortality rates from COVID-19. This is the study. So, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, and mortality based on linked eviction and death records from 2020 through 2021. And again, here we go with death records, right? How good are the death records? There are the death records that people die from COVID, with COVID. This is a whole different deal here, right? Was compared with projected mortality estimated from similar records 2010 through 2016. So they compared 1 year to 6 years. I don't know. This whole thing, sometimes Journal of American Medical Association hits it right on those. Sometimes they are way off base, and they're way off base on this one. And this is my opinion, but it's my opinion as a data analyst. And I'm taking a look at this thing and just wanting to close my eyes because I'm getting a headache. Second one, thunderstorm asthma and climate change. This is like ridiculous. 2016, Melbourne, Australia experienced unprecedented extreme weather event. The event was called thunderstorm asthma, defined as a sudden onset of asthma symptoms in a large number of people due to rare interaction between specific types of thunderstorm and high airborne allergen levels. Okay, really? So, I mean, and climate change. So they're sitting there saying, how many more thunderstorm asthmas are we going to get? Predicting weather is tough. Ask any weather person. I mean, they're having issues with that. So I mean, this is 2016 now, folks, right? So how many times has this, and they talk about 672% increase over a typical number of respiratory related emergency department, blah, 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 blah. They do all this crap. And then basically it goes on. So, I mean, you have all these situations happen, and, exactly what does that mean, right? So enough of that. Let's go into the UN, right? So let's just talk about the UN just for a second here. Okay, the UN has what they call a Security Council. That Security Council is made up of permanent members, and it's also made up of members that are not permanent. Now, the permanent members are China, France, Russia, United Kingdom, and the United States, right? So you have 5 permanent members, right? Any one of those members a, veto resolution, it's done. It can't go on. It's done. I mean, so it's, I mean, so you sit back and you go, oh, okay, that's fine, Chris. Taking into consideration the veto that just happened. But I mean, let's go back. Let's go back a long way. So before we do that, though, let's figure out something here. Let's figure out, about who gives money to the UN. We give money to the UN. Now we give $18 billion. We gave $18 billion in 2022, I think it was. And I'll give you that in a second. So this is 2022, okay? So this is what the UN, this is what the UN or the United States is given. Look at this. I mean, they're given, I mean, who? The United States of America actually gives money to the WHO, to the World Health Organization, right? UNICEF, UNHCR, all these different things they give it to, right? Look how much you're given, 18 billion. Look at the next country. Let me make sure you can see this. I think it's important. Total amount is so okay. I don't want all that. Okay. So United States of America, 18 billion. Germany, 6 billion, almost 7 billion. This is Germany. Japan, almost 3 billion. United Kingdom, 2.1. China gives 2.1 billion to the UN. Canada, just below that. Netherlands, and then we get to France. Just for the record, this is why I don't like France. Just for the record, France was one of the founding members of the UN. I mean, why we did that, I have no idea. I guess Truman felt that France, they were invaded, and then we need to bring them in because they were one of the allies in the war. Yeah, okay, fine. So I mean, but look at that. Norway is just below that. So I mean, we take a look at all this, and others is 14 billion. I don't see Russia anywhere in here. I don't see Russia. Russia's with the others. 14 billion. I mean, Russia puts very little effort into the UN, but yet they have a permanent seat on the Security Council. So people are going to ask me, they're going to say, well, they may not. Well, Chris, that's fine, but what about security resolutions before? Certainly in Korea, we went into Korea. Russia vetoed that. Well, not really. And I'll tell you why. This is so I want to show this to you because I think this is important. So this is This is resolution. This is actually from the archives of the UN, right? And they're sitting there saying, resolution 83, which is, hey, Korea's having problems. We need to do something. This was an invasion of North Korea into South Korea. This was an invasion now. It's interesting, right? So it recommends members of the United Nations furnish such assistance to the Republic as may be necessary for the peace and security of whatever it is. Okay. 7 votes to 1. Adopted 47th meeting by 7 votes to 1. Yugoslavia. Interesting, right? Yugoslavia was communist at that time. Resolution 84, which we're going to go into here. It says here, having determined the arms attack upon the Republic of Korea, blah, blah, having recommended members to furnish such assistance to repel the attack on that. So Resolution 84. Welcomes the prompt and vigorous support which governments and peoples of the United Nations have given to its resolutions 82 and 83, and notes that members of the United Nations have transmitted to the United Nations offers of assistance to the Republic of Korea. And authorizes unified command at its discretion to use United Nations flag in the course of operations against North Korean, blah, blah, blah. 3 abstentions: Egypt, India, Yugoslavia. Interesting, right? But look who's missing. 1 member, Union of Socialist Republic, was absent. It was absent. Interesting, right? I mean, so I sit back and I go, that's really interesting. So it's a let's see who's absent on this one. One member, Socialist was absent. Hmm. So in other words, that the United Nations um, is, they have a history of not taking on what they're supposed to be taking on, and they're doing the same today. And we're funding it. $18 billion we're giving to the United Nations. If the next president wants to do something, get rid of the United Nations, get rid of it, or we'll take it on, but it's not going to be in the United States anymore. We're going to rotate it around the different countries, including African countries. So let's see how everyone reacts to that stuff. So basically, that's what we're talking about. And I'm a little over time, but I just wanted to hit some of those main points and let you know that this is the place if you want to hear the honest to goodness, no kidding worldview. Take care.